So before I start this review of Revolut versus Starling and also versus Monzo and look at which is the best for spending abroad, I just want to say, if you find this in any way useful, please make sure you give the video the thumbs up, you share it with your friends and family, and also consider subscribing to our channel. Now, if you are looking for the cheapest way to spend money abroad but are struggling to decide which is best for you between, say, Revolut and Starling, then this video is looking at those two products and also Monzo alongside to see which is best when it comes to spending abroad. Now, there are lots of other features on Revolut and Starling which I won't go into. I'm only focusing on the spending abroad in this video. But if you want to find out more about Starling Bank, Revolut and Monzo, then make sure you click on the links in the show notes of this video and also the on-screen links that you will see that will take you to full reviews of each of those products as well as side-by-side comparisons. I also in the show notes of this video put a link to the article that I've written about the cheapest ways to take money abroad, which also features on podcast 377 of the Money to the Masses podcast, which I put a link to as well in the show notes because you can listen to that on YouTube if you don't fancy actually reading it. And in that article or that show, I talk about all ways of taking money abroad, including cash, including things like Curve and using your credit card, and which are the best ones. But I also talk about Revolut and Starling, which are the main feature of this particular video and two of my favorite ways of taking money abroad. So typically, if you are on holiday, you may go and spend money and you want to use a card. You may take out your credit card that you use at home in the UK, and when you go to use that with the retailer, they'll give you a choice. And they may ask you whether you want to pay in local currency terms or you want the price converted into sterling. Now, a tip if you're traveling, it's almost always better to choose to pay in the local currency. So just remember when in Rome, and then you'll remember to pay in that local currency. And the reason for that is something called dynamic currency conversion. And what it means is that if you allow the retailer to convert the local currency, the price into pound sterling, then they basically can give it a 4% markup on average. And so you could be paying more than if you just allowed your bank or credit card to do the conversion once you've paid for it. So what would typically happen if you decide to pay in a local currency, which would be the best choice in most cases, is your credit card company then would make that exchange in terms of currency exchange, and you will see that on your statement, but they will also put a fee on top of between 2 and 3%. Now that soon starts to add up. Let's say you spend £1,000 equivalent while abroad, that's going to cost you about £30 just in fees. Now, the wonderful thing about products out there like Revolut and like Starling's bank account is that you can avoid those fees. Now let's take Revolut for example. With Revolut, if you spend abroad, you can spend without paying any of those fees. It's fee free. So when you spend your money abroad, what will happen is it will be exchanged at the currency exchange rate by Revolut, which I'll come on to a bit later in the video, but there won't be any fees. Now there is a limit to the spending, which is fee-free. So beyond £1,000 spending in a given 30-day period, you'll be charged a 0.5% fee during that period on any further spending. Now, Revolut is technically a bank account because it has a sort code and a bank account number, but it's best thought of and used as a prepaid card. In fact, you'll see it referred to as a prepaid card all over the place, including places like Money Saving Expert. And so you've really got two ways of using something like Revolut. You can use it as a prepaid card where you load money onto it and then you spend when you get to your destination, and then it will be converted, the currency will be converted from pounds to, let's say, euros at the point at which you spend the money. Or alternatively, what you can do, you can load sterling onto your card months in advance of going on holiday if you wish, leave it on the Revolut card. You can convert it into euros, which would then be available to spend when you're abroad, but you can choose when you do that. So you can pick an exchange rate which you might think, for example, is particularly good at a given moment in time. Now, you have to point out that Revolut is not actually a UK bank. It doesn't have a UK banking license, so any money on it is not protected by the Financial Services Compensation Scheme. It is in the process of trying to apply for a UK banking license, but it hasn't got it as yet. Now, when you use Revolut abroad, you can draw money out of ATMs, but again, there are limits. There's a £200 a month fee-free limit. Beyond that, you will start to be charged 2% thereafter. That's again within that 30-day period, and it's also a maximum of up to 5 withdrawals in that period as well. Now, Revolut does have plans, so you can pay a monthly charge, and there's 4 different plans. There's the free one, which is one that I would personally use, and there's different plans up to paying £12.99 a month, which give you a whole host of other benefits, including things like access to airport lounges, but they also increase the amount of fee-free spending that you can do each month. Now, with Starling, if we look at Starling now, Starling's a bit different. It is completely free. They never charge any fees for spending abroad or withdrawing money from ATMs. There is no limit like Revolut, for example. But what is actually interesting about Starling is it's a current account in the UK. It does have a UK banking license. So if you decide to use Starling and take out a Starling account, you're effectively getting a UK bank account which you can use when you come back from holiday or before holiday. Now, given that Starling and Revolut don't charge any fees for using your card overseas, of course, as I mentioned, Revolut has some limits, then it boils down to the exchange rate that you get with each card as to whether either will be a better deal. Now, with Revolut, it uses the interbank exchange rate. That means it's pretty much a perfect exchange rate, the cheapest you're probably going to get. Now, if you read around on the internet, lots of people talk about that it is always the cheapest. But what happens, Starling use something called the MasterCard exchange rate because Starling is a MasterCard. Now, that difference is very minimal. When we've done the analysis and looked at the exchange rate you get on any given day, there are times where you get a better exchange rate using Starling than you do with Revolut and vice versa. So the difference between the interbank exchange rate used by Revolut and the one that is the MasterCard exchange rate used by Starling is often negligible. So both of these are fantastic ways to spend money abroad. So it doesn't have to be an either or. You could actually have both. Now, the one thing I have to mention that is unusual about Revolut's exchange rate is that on the weekends, they add a 1% fee on top of their exchange rate. It's basically a buffer to protect them against the currency moves that occur over weekends when banks are shut. So therefore, the rate you get on weekends could be that much worse if you use Revolut. So it really means that the longer you go on holiday and the more chance you are going to use ATMs, for example, the more that Starling will look like better value for you. But if you have both products, then you can choose as and when you spend, and maybe you might spend at the weekend on your Starling card and maybe Revolut during the week if you so chose. But both are fantastic options and are among the best ways to spend money abroad. Now, what about Monzo? Monzo is very similar to Starling effectively. The only difference is that there is a free limit on the ATM usage, and that's £200 a month outside of the EEA, the European Economic Area, and there's a 3% charge thereafter. And if you are inside the EEA, then that limit is £250 a month, and again the charge is 3% thereafter. So they are very similar. So it boils down to that if you are after an app-only bank and current account that offers the products and services you've come to expect from a UK bank, then Starling Bank will appeal over Revolut. And Starling Bank, as I mentioned, gives you that reassurance of the full coverage by the Financial Services Compensation Scheme. While Revolut states that its card is a bank account, it works best as a prepaid card. And as a prepaid card, it is very good. And a lot of people swear by it when they use it while traveling abroad. Now, one of the other differences is that when you apply for a Revolut card, you won't have a credit check of any kind. If you apply for a Starling card, because it's a current account, there will be a soft search made on your credit report. Now, what that means is that no other institution will be able to see it. It doesn't affect your credit score because there isn't a credit associated with that current account, because there is no overdraft by default on Starling accounts unless you apply for them. So it won't impact your credit rating, but there will be a soft search on there. So both of these are fantastic options. Monzo is another equivalent to Starling. Which would I choose between the two? To be honest with you, I would actually and have used both in the past. Now, of course, there are credit cards out there that offer 0% fee-free spending as well, and you'll also get that consumer protection under Section 75 of the Consumer Credit Act when you use your card abroad, and some of them can even give you cash back on your spending while abroad. So make sure you look at that article I mentioned earlier if you're interested in a credit card, that article being the cheapest way to spend money abroad. But of course, don't forget that if you take out a new credit card, then you will be entering into a new credit agreement, which you might not want to do if you're going to be taking out another line of credit or a mortgage, for example, in the not too distant future. Now, if you found that video useful, please make sure you like it and give it the thumbs up, and also subscribe to our channel, and please share it with your family and friends.